everyone, my name is Madison Stanley. I am with a group that focuses on the films Force Majeure as well as Downhill. I will be focusing on part one of both of the films. The first film I touch on is Force Majeure. The country that it is produced in is Sweden, as well as it takes place in the Swiss Alps. The year it was produced is 2014. This genre is a comedy genre, even though most of the reviews, as well as myself watching the film, I couldn't find much comedy in the film itself. It was definitely dramatic. The context, I couldn't find it motivated by politics. I found it to focus more on the psychological, moral, and ethic dilemmas that people go through in relationships, especially when natural disasters occur. Other films released at this time in Sweden were Gentlemen, The Andersons' Rock the Mountains, Crackle Spectacle, White God, and then Star Wars Threads of Destiny. In 2014, Sweden was a period where drama, romance, comedy, and thrillers were very common in films, and this movie does follow this trend. It targets mostly young adults, people with families as well. So the director of this movie's name is Ruben Östlund. He was born April 13th, 1974 in Gothenburg, Sweden. After high school, he worked in various ski resorts in the Alps during the winter season. So he's very seasoned to know what kind of environment that looks like. He started filming ski stunts with his friends and eventually started studying at the University of Gothenburg, where he created his production studio that now he produces his movies through, called Platform Production. His first films were The Guitar Moodland, Involuntary Play, and then Force Majeure. So Ruben's intention for this film, kind of like I said earlier, focuses on a kind of moral ideal that people have in catastrophic events. So I found a quote where he stated that it was inspired by the question, how do human beings react in sudden and unexpected situations such as a catastrophe? It examines how people not only physiologically, psychologically, but more as moral subjects that are committed to certain ideals and values. He said that this film was inspired by a Swedish couple on vacation in Latin America. As a gunman burst into the restaurant and began firing, rather than protecting his family, the husband dove for cover and left the rest of them out in the open. So once again, it kind of focuses more on the ideals and values that kind of escape someone when they're confronted with a catastrophe. So the cast of Force Majeure plays the mother is Lisa, as well as Johannes, the father. And then we have two young daughter and son to accompany them. The seasoned actors are going to be the mother, and then there's a supporting character, Christoph. He is known in other films across the country and the world as well. He also stars in Game of Thrones series on HBO. Everyone else was more of a breakout actor. They're known for this film rather than others. So the plot of this film, it's about a young Swedish couple. They go on vacation with their young kids. Their vacation starts out pretty normal. It shows the dynamic of the family. They seem pretty loving and supportive. And then on the second day is when the catastrophe starts. The avalanche begins while their lunch is served. You see the restaurant isn't really ready for the avalanche, so the snow starts to tumble in. This is when the husband, Thomas, jumps for cover, leaving his wife and children behind, which ends up them getting tumbled by the snow. This then creates conflict between the husband and wife, as we later find out they're okay. And then as the days go on, the husband and wife start to tell their own stories of what happened. It sees as the husband is in denial that he didn't leave them hanging, but the wife is constantly saying, you're wrong, this is what happened. So that creates turmoil in the family and the moralities that happen in a crisis to the main theme of the plot. So the next film I'm going to touch on is the remake of the film I just touched on. It's called Downhill. This film is produced in the United States of America, and the year it was produced is 2020. This genre is a Black comedy, otherwise known as a dark comedy, morbid humor, or edgy humor. It also is dramatic. So I also couldn't find this context of this film to be motivated by politics or school It has evidence, again, of psychological, moral, ethical dilemmas. The cinematic context is, once again, natural disasters. I found lots of films produced in the United States around the year 2020, so I focused more on the month. The releases of the other films were The Invisible Man, The Night Clerk, Sonic the Hedgehog, Birds of Prey, and The Lodge. All of these movies were pretty dramatic, as well as filled with action. This movie wasn't really filled with action, and it focused more on the drama and the Black comedy. So like I said, in 2020 in the United States, there were lots of films were produced focusing on the month of February. The themes were all over the place, so it did not really follow a trend. The directors are downhill. So versus the first film I touched on, there's actually two directors, so co-directing this film. The first one I'm going to touch on is Jim Rash. He was born in July 1971 in Charlotte, North Carolina. So he has no idea really what the Swiss Alps kind of look like. He was adopted. He was a member of the Groundlings, which is an improv comedy club based in Los Angeles, California. That kind of helps his career path, as he is in a lot of comedies such as Sky High, That 70s Show, Reno 911, Friends, in supporting acting positions. He also wrote the original screenplay for the movie Descendants. I ended up not going with his version, as they remade most of the movie and the plot. But since 2017, he has also been the official voice actor of Donald Duck. And most of, like I said, his films focused around the comedy of a teenage life. And then the second director, his name is Matt Faxon. He was born in 1975 in Massachusetts. His early life, he graduated from high school at Holderness School. He also graduated from Hamilton College. His career is very similar to the last director. He starts off with the Grounding sketch comedy in Los Angeles. This is where they meet. He is a supporting actor in lots of films and TV shows, such as Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Show, Bad Teacher, The Cleveland Show, Reno 911 again. And his career also focuses heavily on comedies. So I couldn't find a whole lot of intention for Downhill, other than they just wanted to remake or preserve the original film. I did find an interview where one of the directors stated, "See how challenging people have in reflecting on tragic moments and how comedy plays a huge part in those stories." So they wanted to kind of focus on how once a traumatic event happens in someone's life, the story may change multiple times, but usually you can find comedy in those stories because it helps people cope. So the cast of Downhill, it was larger, but I couldn't find any really actors that were seasoned as much as the two main characters. So Julia Dreyfus is the wife. Her name is Billy in the film. And then Will Ferrell is the husband named Pete. And as well as Christoph again in this film. So he starred in the original, and then in the remake, he is the same man that stars in HBO's Game of Thrones as well. So the plot is very similar. It is an American couple. They take a ski vacation to the Alps. A catastrophe occurs from the avalanche. Once again, the husband deserts the wife for safety. Conflict arises when she is found okay, but they have to force themselves to reevaluate their lives and how they feel about one another after this event occurs. So it is very similar. I found lots of reviews that this movie is very dry and dull. I also kind of thought that myself. I thought the first film was much more intense with the drama and the internal conflict that each character kind of goes through. But overall, it was pretty similar. Here's my references. Thank you.